Los Angeles Rams and the Dallas Cowboys. This is 6.5 in favor of the Cowboys at home against the Rams. 45.5 is your total. So, Adam, I look at this and I have the Rams, I think, power rated higher than most people. I think they're probably like just an average-ish, somewhere between on a good day, like 14th, on a bad day, probably like 18th, but like the range is just kind of right there in the middle of meh, and like that's kind of where I have the Rams. This line says otherwise, right? Like this line says that they're kind of one of the lower teams in the NFL. So I think if anything, I would take it with the Rams, but not in the account quite yet. What say you?
So in terms of power ratings, you and I are simpatico in that I have the Rams at T13. I have them right with the LA Chargers and the Minnesota Vikings, where they're teams that I think do enough well that in any given week, they're going to beat the weaker teams in the league, but they're teams that I wouldn't trust at all against an elite team overall. Now, Dallas has elite upside, but they don't do it with any consistency. And the biggest thing that is keeping me off this game, because to your point, Matt, I have it rated Dallas 3.5, and it's sitting at Dallas 6.5. However, when Matthew Stafford struggles against teams that can apply pressure, and especially teams that can apply pressure without having to blitz. And that is pretty much who Dallas is, right? I mean, they are going to be able to get home against this Los Angeles Rams team. Rob Havenstein is questionable for them to go. That might be their most important offensive lineman overall. So it's a lean to the Rams at 7. It's a play on the Rams because at that point I will just say I trust Matthew Stafford and company to be able to chase back a touchdown if they get down 13 or 14. But overall, you have to understand something about this Rams team. By non-garbage time EPA this year, they're the number 4 offense in football. They've been that good. It's just a question of this situation specifically. I'm a little bit worried about their ability to protect Stafford.
Yeah, you look last week, it was mildly concerning. They got shut out like in the fourth quarter against the Steelers. To me, that was at least mildly concerning. I think that it is more of a product, again, of sometimes I think Matthew Stafford does tend to force balls. Matthew Stafford has like he has a love affection, right, with his wide receivers. If one guy's kind of hot for the day, then he just continues to go to that guy like repeatedly over and over and over again. And then I think last week was the opposite. I think like he felt bad that Cooper Kupp only had a couple of catches in the game. And I feel like he was looking Cooper Kupp's way when he didn't really like. Puka Nacua is just running free, like out there, like all over the place. And like, he's like, I got to get the ball to Cooper Kupp. He's only got a couple of catches today. Like, I don't know. It was a little bit odd in that second half anyway from the offense. The first time they really just completely struggled all year, and I didn't really get it. Steven, I agree with Adam 100%. If this got to 7, and like I said, there is a 6.5 out there. I think it's not out of the range of possibilities that like the Cowboys, who are a fairly popular team, could continue to get money. Bet on them. If it does get to a full 7, I'll go ahead and be in on the Rams. Where are you at in this one?
I'm finger on the trigger of the Rams here too, guys. And I actually went to Mo Noir on our staff and said, give me a reason not to bet this right now. And he said the same thing with the Cowboys pass rush. And I just want to pose the same question to you guys, because on paper, they're only 22nd in pressure rate, and they're only getting pressure 21% of the time, despite blitzing 30% of the time. So what am I missing here, Matt?
Nothing. Here's the perception that they get a ton of pressure. It's because it's always the same guy, and so it like makes it seem like it's more often because they're always calling Micah Parsons' name, and so that to me has kind of skewed what we get with this Dallas pressure, where it's like it seems like it's more than it is because it's always the same guy that's getting it, right? And so
seemingly like always in a huge spot too, right?
Yeah.
Well, and think about that. It's weird, guys, because what it is, I think, is that You have games where they have been absolutely top level elite, and then you have games where they've gotten very little pressure at all. And it kind of meets in the middle when you take that number, because think of the game against the Giants, think of the game against the Jets, think of the game against the Patriots. They were all over the quarterback. And then you go to the game against San Francisco, and they couldn't tell you what was on Brock Purdy's breath because they never got close enough.
Yeah, and I think you make great points there, and the numbers bear that out. They've thrived off turnovers against those inferior opponents this year. They're number one in the NFL in net EPA per play off of turnovers. That has bolstered their overall metrics this year. Now, the Dallas defense as well in the weeks without Trayvon Diggs, and I'm taking out the first week because it was a midweek injury and they didn't have time to adjust to it, but the 3 weeks without Trayvon Diggs after that, this Dallas defense is 26th in EPA, 28th in success rate. They are not in the top 23 in dropback EPA or success rate. They are 29th in rushing success rate defensively. But then you flip the other side, and this is what's weird for me. This, again, finger on the trigger, one last thing that I just am having trouble getting by here. I see that top 5 EPA that you see with the Rams offense, Adam. But what gives me pause is that it's being bolstered by the rushing offense and not Matthew Stafford, because the dropback EPA is 22nd, the dropback success rate is 28th, and Stafford is bottom 5 in the league lately in some of his metrics. And the offensive line, if you look at the pass protection across the grading systems, they are not in the top 25 in the league. So it's almost like bad on bad with the passing game for the Rams against the passing game of the defense, but it's still 6.5 points. So these are the things that are giving me pause, and I want to bet it. Help me get there, guys.
I would need more info on what Matthew Stafford has been bottom 5 on and what period of time, because even last week when he wasn't great, he was good enough. He still was the 16th rated PFF quarterback last week. Overall in the season, he's 7th, and he leads the league in big time throws. So, I would have a hard time.
Okay, so here's the split. Just to answer your question, Here's the split. This is since week 5 when Cooper Kupp came back. Now, there are 2 games in that 3-game stretch against the Philly pressure and the Pittsburgh pressure, which might be clouding this way too much. That's the split here, where he's 33rd out of 35 in EPA and CPOE composite, and 36th or 32nd in success rate since Kupp came back.
I'll close with this. If we're going to talk about overthinking in general, maybe I'm just overthinking a game in which I have it rated Dallas 3.5 and it's 6.5. That might just be it in the long run.
Yeah. I mean, I have it 4.5. I have it 4.5. I probably should bet it too, but I don't have it in the account.
And if Micah Parsons wrecks it, we just live with it. Who cares?
Yeah,
it happens.